Hey everybody, Niall Doherty here from jQuery tutorials for beginners.com. This is our third lesson, and today we're going to walk through three different ways that you can have your code, basically. The three different ways are internal, external, and inline. And we're going to go through each of those and I'll show you exactly what they mean. Now, we'll pick up from where we left off at the last lesson. So this is the same code we finished up with in lesson 2. jQuery, I want to emphasize, and I'll probably say it a few times over the course of these videos, is there's a lot of similarity to CSS in the way it targets things. So learning CSS, if you don't already know it, can really help you get to grips with jQuery. And the whole internal, external, inline ways of coding is the exact same with CSS as well. So you'll probably be familiar with this already if you know how to code in CSS. So we'll start with internal. Internal, it's what we're seeing right here. So first we have our jQuery core included. That has to come first before we start writing any jQuery, because that loads all the functions that we'll need. But then after that we have this code, which is the code that we wrote. And let me show you again what that does. We'll open up a new tab in Chrome, and this is our demo folder that you may remember the directory structure from. So this is the index.html file we were just looking at. We're going to drop it in there. We get the little pop-up that says I'm working. So that's what that code does. This is internal, this code, in that it's within the same page that we're coding. So index.html, it's internal to that page. It's pretty simple, and this is mostly what I'm going to be using, at least starting off in these tutorials, because it's just easier to keep everything in the same document and there's less switching back and forth. So easier for you folks to follow. But external really is what you want to do going forward. It helps you keep code separate and modular. So with this at the moment, if we were to do a second page, say this is index.html, if we were to create page2.html or something, we need to duplicate this code to have the same thing working there. So instead of doing that, what we do is, we don't want to repeat ourselves. We would create a new file that we would include here. So we would call that file, for example, custom.js. Okay, so then we would take this code right here. I'm going to cut that, and now I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to put that code in there. Okay, so I'll just space it out a bit so it's easier to see. Now we're going to save this code as, there's our demo folder on the desktop, and we're going to put it in JavaScript. Going to make sure it's called custom.js. And we're going to save that. Okay, so there's our custom.js. We're going to go back to index.html. We're going to delete this bit now because we don't need it. Again, up here, we need to make sure the jQuery core is the first thing called, and then our custom code is called. So now we'll go back to this, refresh the page. It still works exactly the same. We're doing the exact same thing. It's just that we're moving it out to an external file. So if we were to create page2.html now, we would be able to call this same file. We'd have the exact same thing in the head here. And then anytime we change something in our custom jQuery code, we don't need to change it in multiple pages. We just change it in one place, and that's called into the pages that require that code. So pretty simple and straightforward. Now the last one I want to show you, the inline use, or the inline way to code something. It's not actually that common in JavaScript. It's a lot more common in CSS. To give you a quick CSS example, because that might help some of you understand it. This is inline CSS. So you would say color is equal to, I don't know, we'll just go with the named. Color is equal to red. Then if we refresh this page, we see our color is red. But again, the problem with doing that is you need to do it for everything. If you wanted to all of a sudden want all your paragraphs to be blue instead of red, you'd have to go through and change them all manually. Instead, if you had it in this styling specification in an external style sheet, like we have an external JavaScript file here, well then you just change it in one place and it trickles down or cascades down really in the case of CSS. So let me show you an example for JavaScript. We're going to delete this because we don't want the external file anymore. Say we want to get the same thing working but using internal, or inline rather. Oops, I just got to type this out again. Text type is equal to text / JavaScript. So we're still going to need to do a little bit of internal. There's probably a way you can do it completely inline, but I just want to give you a taste of it here. We don't want to actually go the whole hog because, as I said, this is not something I advise doing, but it's just good to know that it's possible, I guess. Okay, in here we're going to write a function. And we'll deal later with functions at a later date. This is just a quick idea so you get the hang of it. Okay, function, it's going to be a simple alert saying hello, just like that. Now, you'll notice here we don't have the document.ready wrapper that basically tells the page to execute our jQuery code. That's because this isn't actually jQuery code. This is pure JavaScript we've written here. So it's not in that jQuery wrapper. So when we load this page at the moment, refresh, nothing happens because there's nothing there to tell. When we had the jQuery wrapper there, it was basically saying when this page is ready, execute the following code. Now what we have is a function and we've nothing telling the page to trigger that function. So we're going to use some inline coding in the body tag to tell it to trigger it. So the way we would do that is we'd say body on load, say hello. So basically we're saying trigger that function when the page is loaded, and there it is. Another way we could do it, let's cut that, let's put it in the p tag here, and we could say on click say hello. So trigger that function when we click the paragraph tag, and there it is. So it shows up when we click it. So this is inline coding, but again, it's what's the word? It's not extendable. It's very clunky. Everything is in amongst each other. Ideally, you want to keep your code separate. So you want to have your .html files should only have HTML code in them. Your .js files will have your JavaScript code. Your .css files will have your CSS code, and then you would just include them like this for JavaScript, similar for CSS. So let me undo all this stuff I just did, and we'll go back to document.ready, alert, I'm working. Again, this is internal. Oops, let me get rid of this. Not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is external, which I've showed you a minute ago. But we're going to stick with internal now because just for the simplicity of demonstrating how some of this stuff works. So there we go, still working. That's the difference between internal, external, and inline coding. As I said, very like CSS. I'll have a good link to a good resource in the associated blog post for this video, showing you a really good website for learning CSS. It's called w3schools.com. Really good examples there. That's all I've got for this tutorial. Next lesson, we're going to look at event handlers. So we're basically going to be making something happen on click, which is kind of like what we saw there with the inline example, but a lot tidier and using jQuery. So join me for that one, and I'll see you next time.